Welcome, friends. I am excited to introduce you to a new launch that we have created under the Unbreakable family, which is something that we have really believed has been a missing link in society, in families, and in relationships for a long time. And that is the opportunity for men to have a place to feel unbreakable. Today, as we kick that off, I am very excited to introduce you to a great friend of ours, a mentor, and someone who Royal and I have really leaned on over the last several years as we were in our breaking journey that led to Unbreakable. And that's my friend, my pastor, and my mentor, Pastor Jerry Edmon. So, welcome, Pastor Jerry.
I'm glad to be here. It's been an exciting journey for, many years now. So I've enjoyed it. I'm so proud of what's happening. The Unbreakable program is just, it's expanded to the point that I think it's going to impact a lot of people. And Unbreakable Men is going to be a great part of that. Probably one of the most needed part of that. Yeah. I think there's been such an attack against men over this last couple of decades, really.
Right.
Manhood has been under attack. I don't want to just get into trying to make it too feminine, but they have really taken the masculinity of men. I was thinking the other day, I was thinking of John Wayne. I thought, dang, you don't see very many John Waynes anymore.
Sure.
Just men. And I think that, of course, I think that's something that's changing. And I believe that your program is going to be something that can really awaken that, because instinctively, I think in every man, there is a desire to be a man. There's a masculinity that wants to rise up in him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a desire, but isn't it crazy? I think you almost need permission to go there.
Right.
I remember when I pastored my first church. I was 18 years old, and it was, oh my God, I was so young. Sheesh, I was so young. But I remember during that time, I was in a leadership role, but I struggled with the thought of being a man. And I needed something that I didn't have.
Right.
I needed an acknowledgement. I needed someone to tell me, which is a mentor. I needed someone to tell me, Jerry, you are a man. Now, the military does that. The military brings them in, just beats the tar out of them for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, they say, you are a man. And they really accept that from a peer, not just a peer, but from someone that is over them.
Authority. Mm-hmm.
The Jewish culture does the same thing. They'll bring a 13-year-old boy in, they'll do a bar mitzvah. And at the end of that, they gather their uncles, all of their peers, all of the people that are in their life, and they will say, you are now a man. And so from a very young age, they accept that. But I was 18, 20 years old, and I struggled with being a man. It's like I struggled with it. I could see someone else as a man that was my age, but I struggled seeing me. And I really believe that the reason was I could not have been more loved. I could not have been more accepted in my family. But I never had my father say to me, Jerry, you are a man. Mm-hmm. And so I struggled with that. And it wasn't for a few years I struggled with that. And I think that's a real need in man. One of the greatest needs is acknowledgement. You see young men that's in prison, they're in there, and we've been in a fatherless generation, and their attitude is, I don't care whether you like me at all, because I don't like you, but you will respect me as what? As a man. You will acknowledge me as a man. And so there's a craving in society and manhood overall, just simply for manhood. Yeah. But it's like a I don't want to say a gift that is given, but it is a baton that is passed to the next generation. So I think what you're doing with this Unbreakable Men is going to be one of the most powerful and needed things to establish identity, to establish and to give them the permission. Isn't that crazy you have to say that? Because we're talking about manhood that, they beat their chest, but they almost need permission to go beat their chest.
Right. Well, I think, when you talk about they desire that and it's something that's burning within them, what do you think is a response when they don't get that? How do you see men act out when they're looking for that, but nobody acknowledges it in them, or it's stripped away from them? What do you feel like is a response to that, to this lack?
Well, it's what I was saying a while ago, even with young men in prison.
Yes.
A lot of them will act out and they'll do something lawless, which will end them in
In
prison.
prison, yeah.
But their attitude almost consistently, if you will look across much of that population, you're going to see where they're actually saying, I don't care if you like me.
Mhm.
I'm not looking for someone to like me. I'm not looking for someone to love me, but you will respect me. I'm a
Mhm.
man.
Mhm.
I'm not some boy. I'm not some child. I'm a man. And you will acknowledge it if I have to do it with a gun,
Yeah,
if I have to do it with force,
right.
whatever. Because so I just think that's a craving need in every young man to have a father,
Mhm.
to have and it may not even be a father. It could be a school teacher. It could be somebody that is over them, that is in that position, that gives them permission to take that chair,
Yeah.
you know.
So you mentioned that you were seeking that yourself. Did you have a mentor or a teacher that spoke that into you, or life into you, an experience where a mentorship, a hand holding of some sort?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I don't know how that happened. I don't, because I've known people, but it was like I never opened up for that to happen. And that's why I struggled with it. I
Mhm.
was in positions of authority, but inside I was struggling for my manhood. Of course, 19, 20 years old, 22 years old, you're still, in many ways, you're still a kid, but there was that struggle, and I didn't have that.
Mm.
I didn't have that father. Most of the things that I did at that age, I felt I felt a vision, I felt a passion, and I just went out and killed it and drug it home. And so it was just something that I didn't have.
Mm.
But as I look back at it, it would have saved me a lot of grief, a lot of um, uncertainty,
Mhm.
just struggle to look at myself as a man. And we try to cover that. We try to mask it,
Sure.
but that is a legitimate need. But I didn't have anyone.
Yeah. So let's talk about the masking for a minute, because with a lot of the women that I work with, they do put up masks. We joke around saying, "I'm going to take my makeup off, take my mask off," but we don't usually take our mask off. It takes a lot to feel safe to take a mask off. And there's people that are walking around, they're showing up in rooms, they're showing up in boardrooms where very important decisions are made. They're showing up in, school settings, and if they have this mask up and they have these underlying things that are not being met, right? That need is not being met. How detrimental could that be to the people that they serve?
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think such a vast difference between men and women in this area, because I think the needs are so different. There's a need in a woman uh, to have security,
Mhm.
a need in a man to be respected, honored, acknowledged, and that's that need. And I think that's in us, because that is, like I said a while ago, that's the thing that enables us to go out and brave the storm, or go out and kill it and drag it home.
Yeah.
And so the difference, I just think there's a difference, but we mask it in different ways.
Right.
We mask it a lot of times. Men will mask it and in their search for identity, in their search for covering, they'll mask it in toughness,
Mhm.
when much of the things that they do in that area is actually insecurity speaking out.
Mhm.
They 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 try to. I think a lot of bullies are really just very insecure young
Right.
boys, is
Right.
what they are, and they're looking for boundaries. That's kind of amazing. I've noticed with strong-willed children, there's a need within them, especially boys. There's a need within them for that covering, for that boundaries. It's almost like they need that. And a strong-willed child, what he'll do is he'll try every door. He'll beat on every door, hoping that they're locked,
Mm.
because that brings security to him.
Right.
I feel secure with the fact that I can't go there. And I think when people get out of control is when they never have that mentor that actually locks the door on them. They're able to just go and behave whatever the way they want. They do, they express themselves many times in a very unlawful way or unappreciative way or fits, torments, and they're never challenged by that mentor. And they go through life and they become adults manifesting the most horrible attitudes, just sometimes mean. But it's like I really believe unconsciously, I think that what people that are doing, especially that act out, I believe what they're doing is they're trying those doors hoping that they're locked. They'll break something, hoping that they're challenged. They'll do something instinctively. Maybe they don't realize it, but I think there's a need in everybody to know who they are and to know what their boundaries are. And in men, that is a serious need, and I think one of the most unmet. And so what they've tried to do in many ways is to they've tried to change the identity of men. We've gone through a lot of that, almost to the point to where over the last few years, they've talked about toxic masculinity.
Right.
And that's just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, it really is. and what toxic masculinity ends up being, that ends up just being something that's coming on too strong for someone else.
Sure.
That maybe is not masculine.
Right.
And so they demonize it. And that's kind of what's happened. They demonize manhood. They demonize masculinity. But one of the greatest needs for a family, for a relationship, is genuine masculinity that knows who they are and can serve with gentleness within that strength. It's almost like an iron hand in a velvet glove.
Sure.
You know, I think that's how, and they need that. Your kids, they need that. They need to know that dad is the most gentle and soft and wonderful, but at the same time, he's dad.
Right.
And there's consequences.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why mom has always said, wait till your dad gets home.
But in some families, the mom has had to take over that role of authority and those types of things. And a lot of times, not because of a lack of masculinity, but a lack of a man's presence in the home as well, right?
Yes.
And so that's put, I think, a lot of women in that seat of having to carry more masculine energy. But when you think about the people that, obviously you said you didn't necessarily have somebody lead you by the hand, what did that lack in your awareness of it? How did that propel you to want to be that mentor and teacher for others?
I don't know. I don't know that I consciously did that. I just know that there was a need. It's almost like you're hungry. What are you hungry for? I don't know. I don't know, but I'm hungry. How about this? No, I don't want that. How about that? No, I don't want that. Well, what are you hungry for? I don't know, but I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how it is. I just knew that there was a need. And again, over a period of time, because listen, when you're 18 years old and you're pastoring a church, people will pat you on the head.
That was really cute.
They do. I'm not kidding. They will do that. And rightfully so. But it was.
But the good news is you probably had just enough arrogance to get through it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, and every man needs a pinch of arrogance.
Well,
every man, they need that.
That's funny.
But I did. You know, I was 22 maybe, and of course, I was pastoring a church in Oklahoma City. I started my own television show when I was about 22. This was way back when. It was a half hour long, and it was actually before they were really doing interviews at that time. And so I was trying to interview. I didn't have the infrastructure to really sustain it, but just a couple of years. But I was doing a lot of things. I wrote some books. It was like God had just blessed me. And a lot of the need that I had, I think, was satisfied in accomplishments. I did things that meant something. I knew that it meant something, which is one of the horrible things that have to do with gaming today. A lot of people, instead of doing things, instead of accomplishing things, you can get caught in a game. on your phone.
Sure, you're distracted.
You are, and it can literally eat up everything. And
Right.
and manhood is by nature, it's designed to create, to cover, to protect,
Mhm.
to be that. There's not in an offensive way, not in an aggressive way,
Domineering or controlling,
but just
right?
being there.
Yeah.
Uh, just being a covering, maybe a quiet covering, but it's covering.
Mhm.
And by nature, that is one of the biggest things that we have. And I think we get so distracted by all of the other things that we're not accomplishing things, we're not doing things. And so I didn't have
Or
that
we're not
back
even
in those
seeing
days.
things.
Yeah, true. That's
Yeah.
true. But I didn't have that. So I just accomplished all the things. So I think a lot of the things that I needed in my manhood was provided by things that I did,
Mhm.
things that I accomplished. I've been a dreamer my whole life, which you have also been a dreamer. God puts that in us. But I think that was one of the things. And so in lieu of the not having a mentor and somebody that just honestly, and it needs to happen at a young age.
Mhm.
It needs to happen. I think every group needs, and we did that for a little while and then stop that. But there needs to be a rite of passage for
Mm.
every young man.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about those that come out of being, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they step into this new season of their life. And it is new.
Right.
And that's why so many young men get on drugs, because they're trying things. They're doing things. They don't have any direction. A mentor has got to do more than just saying, I'm here if you're having a nervous breakdown.
Sure.
It's got to be someone who speaks into your life that can give a little bit of direction.
Mm.
That
Well, and I think to piggyback on that for a moment, if somebody's never had a mentor, or maybe they're 20, 24 years old and they're starting a TV show like you did, right? What would you say to that person about the importance of having a mentor? Because at that stage in life, we pretty much think, whether right or wrong, we've got it all figured out, right? I was having a conversation with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he had been working under a company for many years and had felt like, I'm at this place now that I can go launch my own company. And his mentor in that company said, you could do that, but I want you to come and do this new thing with me. And he said, why would I do that? I've got the skills, I've got the resources, I can do this on my own. And the mentor said, because I need you and you need me. And in that relationship exchange, they stayed together for 2 years. And now he has a company that circles the globe. But he wouldn't have had that had he gone off of his own feelings about, I've got enough skill now, I can do it on my own. That time with the mentor was a sacrifice on both sides, right? The mentor and the mentee. But it changed everything for this young man's life. So, what would you say to somebody who thinks they've got it all figured out?
well, I would say you're wrong. You think you do.
Yeah.
You honestly believe you do. Of course, you know that. Any 14, 15-year-old thinks, what's the old saying? The older I get, the smarter my dad got. Um, I think I think that would have helped me so much
Mm.
if I'd have had someone. And it wasn't that what I did wasn't good, but it would have been so good for someone to say to me, Jerry, don't do that. What you need to do is go serve under this person for a while and grow
Mhm.
and learn.
Mhm.
That would have made a big difference. I believe that there's a model that every person should have. And this is in the area of being a mentor. I think everyone needs to have someone over them and someone under them.
Mm.
If you only have people over you, you will eventually become insecure. You'll get to where you can't even make a decision. If you only have people under you, you'll become arrogant and nobody can tell you anything.
Mhm.
And so, for a balanced, healthy life, a person needs both. They need someone over them, they need someone under them. They need someone that's speaking into their life that they're submitted to. Now, that's not a controlling thing, but that's just a thing. It's kind of these are markers. They're setting up markers in my life where I can say, that's a boundary that I need to consider.
Right.
And that's one big thing concerning being a mentor that I think people don't understand. they almost have the idea you've got to control somebody or whatever. And that's simply not the case at all. Being a mentor, as a matter of fact, I believe you can't be a true mentor to somebody if you're not in relationship with them.
Mm.
I think you need to be, and you need to know them. You need to be someone that they can trust, somebody that is at a point when, because there are times whenever, I don't care when it is, you're going to run into something you don't know, and you almost need someone to make a decision for you, someone that can help guide you during those times. And I don't think it's really. I mean, we can have mentors from the standpoint of somebody that inspires me, someone who I'm drawing. Success leaves a trail, so I'm taking the breadcrumbs from their trail. I'm following that, and that certainly is a mentor. But I think there's a need for a deeper mentor. It's almost like having a father,
Right.
a father in your life, and everybody needs that. I don't care how old you are. You need someone that fills that position.
Mhm.
And of course, that's one thing that's missing in this fatherless generation.
Mhm.
We need that. We need that. My dad said this.
Mhm.
There's just a resolve with that. And I would strongly suggest that anybody that wants to be a mentor, that they should consider. I mean, if they're truly going to be a mentor to a person's life, that they need to look for ways to cultivate that relationship
Mhm.
to where they can invest in that relationship to a point that it enriches them. There's a part of you that's left with them.
Like a legacy.
Well, it is. And I don't think a legacy is a legacy if something is not passed. And it's not just an information, it's a part of myself
Right.
that they carry, a part of my identity that they bear.
Mm.
You know, your son, your daughter, I don't want to have to control everything they do. I don't want them to ask me what kind of beans to buy. I'm not interested in that. But I want it to be when the heat gets on, a part of me comes out in them.
Sure.
And I think that's the deeper side of it. Of course, you can have mentors, several people that you draw from. I've heard some people make a statement one time. They say, "I gave them some advice one time, so I'm their mentor." Well, I mean, it's just people,
Sure.
and I know that there's different levels of it, but I'm talking about the deep-seated mentor. There needs to be an investment, an exchange
Right.
somehow. No relationship works without an exchange, any more than a marriage doesn't work without an exchange. If a marriage is only one-sided, it's going to run into trouble. It's going someone's going to be abused, someone's going to be taken advantage of, someone's going to be forgotten. And so no relationship that is worth anything is one-sided. There's got to be an exchange. And from the standpoint of those relationships and mentoring, there's got to be something. And so even if I have a mentor, I need to give something of myself to them. And sometimes that's hard to do. I don't know what to do. I don't want to control their time, but I want to make an investment of myself on some level. And I think that's something that people need to do in advance.
Right. You set up some kind of
Yeah.
parameters or expectations without being rigid. We're not signing a contract,
Right,
right?
right. You're right. But there's a need.
Right.
It's just and it's instinctive. I guess that's and all my rambling today. I think that's probably the thing that rings out most to me is this is something that's written on the heart, and it's a need, an unspoken need that drives me.
Yeah.
And if I don't get it, I will instinctively and unconsciously, I'll reach out for it someplace.
Sure. Well, Tony Robbins talks about the 5 or 6 basic human needs, and one of them is the need for significance, right? Another one is the need for contribution. And if those needs are not met through a mentorship program, your relationships, etc., you will look for unhealthy ways to find those needs. And that's a very scary place to think about too. And I think that's why a lot of people, overindulge in certain things, male or female, why they maybe get lost in video games, like you talked
Yes.
about, because it's feeding those needs that I have that aren't being met elsewhere, but it's stealing the time
Right.
for me to be
Right.
able to do the things that I'm called to do. Because I believe that what you have, I need, and what I have, you need.
Yes.
And that's how we were created. And men specifically, I feel like in the work that we're doing, I feel like we're seeing a lot of people with that idea. I don't need anybody and nobody needs me. In fact, I know for many, many years, one of those programming lessons that were taught to people is nobody cares about your problems and you don't need anybody. You can do it on your own. And that creates a big gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Isolation's a trap. It is a trap. But most of the time, I think those things are said just because I'm hurt or I'm embarrassed or maybe I'm just deceived and I don't need anybody. We've all said that, I guess. And it's a self-defense mechanism.
Sure.
I'm trying to, it's a mask. I don't need anybody. I don't want anybody. Well, that's simply not true.
Or my teenager, get out of my room. Don't come near me. And
You're
she's
ruining my
starving,
life.
right, for connection. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, those are things. And again, back to men, I think I think instinctively, I was just thinking as you were talking there about the gaming situation. You ever notice how maybe girls do it? I'm sure they do, but mostly it's boys. Look at the violence in the gaming.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I in my game, I just killed 350 people, and it's like instinctively. Of course, when I was a little boy, I had the little
G.I.
army
Joe?
soldiers. Well, no, I never had G.I. Joe, but I had the little plastic army soldiers. And the thing is there's always that sense of, I think, in every boy of conquest. I worry about that if they don't have that. There needs to be, and I think we should help cultivate that in a healthy way in the boys as their children.
Sure.
Because there is going to be that conquest. The boys are getting in a fight there at school. Now you hear sometimes of mean girls, but when I was a kid, it was the boys. I mean, we just at recess, somebody was
going to beat you up.
Yeah, going to be in a fight, and that's instinctively in us to battle, to war, and even in sports, they're football and rugby. These are aggressions. There's such a natural instinctive aggression in a man that needs to be there. It needs to be there because he's going to face the wolf at the door. Right. He's going to face it and he's got to deal with it.
Right.
I mean, you can't hide from it. You can't go hide in a game. You can't go hide in anything. Eventually, you got to kill the wolf on the porch.
So let's talk about what some of those wolves might look like.
Well, a lot of those things could be responsibilities. It could be, let's say, something happens in your life, an accident, a wreck, a threat, just anything that would come that would challenge us. But Teresa, I mean, think about this. How many things in this day and time do women take care of instead of men?
Well, let me just tell you, I'm very grateful that I don't have to take the trash out in my house.
Well, yes, yeah, I know. And I'm that great man of paste and flour. I take the trash out too. I had a friend of mine. He was on the power team, John Jacobs and the power team. And one of the guys that was on there, of course, these are massive. I mean, they would come places and they'd tear phone books apart and break bats and just enormous. I mean, huge, massive displays of strength. And he told me, he said, I go out and he said, I'm literally King Kong and Hercules. And I go home and my wife makes me take the trash out.
Well,
But there are, I think though that women have to carry a
Sure.
lot of things that men don't face it. That they don't deal with a problem comes up, she has to do it. Now
Mhm.
there's some things, listen, there's some things you're going to be better at than I am.
Right.
You just are. I feel like if your wife's a CPA, what the heck are you doing handling your books?
Sure.
Play to her strengths. But I think there's a lot of men today that have become weak and not taken responsibility because it wasn't established when they were young of taking responsibility of manhood.
Right.
There's a certain thing of manhood, and I don't want to overplay it. I know this could probably be misinterpreted, but there's a certain thing of manhood that should be powerful in this world. It should be something that they walk with the earth should shake a little bit because they're walking.
Mm.
It should be that.
Mhm.
But we've diminished it. We've downplayed it,
Mhm.
medicated it. I think I'm horrified at the medications that they're putting children in. The
Right.
young
Right.
young boys, because they wiggle in the blooming chair and they put them on medication when what they need to be doing is they need to be sent to the yard
Mhm.
and go chop something down,
Right.
dig dig a
Use
hole,
that.
just
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
But the aggression is going to come out.
Right.
But what they're doing is they're misjudging it. They're calling it things. I don't care who they are. They're wrong. They are wrong to medicate a child in those situations. I'm not saying all children don't need to medicate. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they need help. But most of the time, there is an instinctive aggression in a young boy that can only be released by aggression,
Sure.
by doing something, going hunting, building something, something that they do with their hands.
Mud pies.
Well, no, that's a chick thing. They don't do
Oh,
mud pies.
it's a chick thing. Well, I want to ask you about one of my favorite quotes that you say, and you've said for years, and it's about strong men make good times. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that actually I wish had come from me, but it did not. But it's worth stealing if you can do it. Is the fact that strong men bring good times, and oh Lord, how does that go?
Good times make weak men.
Yes, good times. You know this better than I do. Good times make weak men.
Weak men make bad times.
Yes.
Bad times make
strong men. Yes, and it becomes a vicious cycle. I think one of the worst things that happened in World War II, because there were men and women that were amazing. I'm telling you, they sacrificed themselves. They worked for nothing. They worked for honor. They worked for just work just to have the job. They put themselves out there, sacrificed. And I think one of the worst things that they did was they said, my children will never have to go through what I went through.
Mhm.
And so what they did was they produced a simpler, softer time for them, which made them weaker.
Mm.
It made them weaker.
Well, do you feel like we might be there today?
Well, oh my God. Yeah. I need to measure my words because I have such an intense attitude about it. I think it is horrifying that men would be suckered into the role play
Mm.
that many of them were. I heard Burt Reynolds one time. I don't know if you remember Burt Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
What a guy. I was listening to him. He was doing actually a round table conversation, and he was talking to a group of guys, and he said something I'd never thought of before. He said, in Hollywood, he said, when they're looking for a star, when they're looking for someone to, fit this role, he said that person has got to be a little bit dangerous. I never thought about that, but that's true. Most of the people that they pick, even though they are feminizing manhood, absolutely stripping away manhood as best they can, especially in this pursuit of transgender. Of they're trying so hard to do that they're all they can do is to strip away that to justify this. But anyway, he made a statement. He said, and I got to looking at it. Most of the men that you see that are strong leading men, they're a little bit dangerous.
Like John Wick.
Well, yeah, and it's just. But seriously, you go through and you look.
Sure.
And it's not saying that they're mean.
No.
It's not saying that they're anything like that, but they can be a little bit scary, just a little bit dangerous. And I think that again, that is instinctively what we want. We want to watch that. We want to see that. I can see somebody. I watch. God, I don't even know if I can give the names of these shows, but I watched Everybody Loves Raymond, which he is so funny. The guy he's just brilliant. But they created this character of a fellow that couldn't fold a napkin
without his mama,
without being classed as an idiot, and classed as it's almost just classed as this weak,
sure, feeble,
yeah, and we went through a season of that.
But I feel like that's also on a lot of commercials.
Yes.
Yeah. Men can't make the decisions. Men can't do a lot of things. We see it on credit card commercials. We see it.
Well, but I think that is true in a lot of cases. And that's what I said a while ago about the wife. I think the wife has instinctive. As Joe McGee made this statement, he said, a man's mind is a woman's mind is a 4-lane highway, and a man's mind is one lane rickety bridge. And I think that women have an instinctive ability to juggle all of those things, which as he doesn't. But it's like they've diminished. I think there's an agenda behind it. Maybe
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. It's it's a horrible agenda that we bought into, but it's changing. I really believe it's changing. I really believe that there's something that's coming up in men that are just saying, I've just about had all that I'm going to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they've reached a limit, right? And they're tired, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know where to go. They don't know where these feelings that they have are going to be respected and appreciated and honored, or if they're going to be cut down, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's kind of it comes to the place you think, I don't care.
Yeah.
You can burn the whole thing down. I don't care. There's a masculinity. It's a strength that says, I don't need you. I don't need your opinion. I don't care what you think. This is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do. And that births a sense of leadership, of strength. May not always be the right answer, which is a reason a person has to have his wife or a mentor that can help produce guardrails, or not only like guardrails, but at least sensors that tell you when you're stepping out. When I play golf, some courses that I play on, if I take my cart out onto the fairway when it's not supposed to, it'll start beeping. You can't go here. And then it'll just shut down, if I just keep on. And I think everybody needs that, because even though in manhood, there's a drive that pushes us beyond boundaries. It pushes us to the point that I'm going to explore. I'm going. And Angie said to me the other day, she said, I wish you would get your mind out of the fourth and the fifth dimension and just take care of the yard.
That's funny.
But that's true though. I mean, I just, even with all of the natural things that I'm doing, there's an exploration in your mind. I want to find this out. I want to go out. I want to go where I've never been. I want to do something I've never done. And that's a healthy masculinity, provided you have healthy mentors
Mm,
and markers that they help set up. A mentor does not control a person.
sure.
I think that is so important. They do not control them. They don't manipulate them. A true mentor gives more than he takes. He serves more than he's served. And I think that's one of the true natures of a mentor, because the motivation then isn't selfishness.
Mhm.
It isn't my agenda. It isn't what can you do for me. And that's where a lot of people have gotten caught up in the mentor thing, is the fact that they're there for me rather than I'm there for them.
Sure.
You become a parent, suddenly it isn't about you anymore.
That's right.
It's what can I give to make you successful,
Yeah.
or the best part of you, who you are.
Mm.
So I think that's important. And that's a part of manhood that I think has been lost, but is being recovered. I truly believe that. I think Donald Trump, a lot of people, whether they like him or whether they don't, something happened to him when he got shot
Mhm.
and blood was running down his face, and he stood up and raised his fist and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." That, God, that was a man.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is, and I promise you, every world leader, G, Putin, it didn't matter. All you just go across the princes and the kings in Saudi Arabia. They literally are rolling out the red carpet for this guy because they
They
recognize
recognize.
strength.
Yeah.
That was strength. That was, to them, that's a man.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, you can't. It's almost even with terrorists. You can't negotiate with terrorists because that's not how they operate. There's only one thing they respond to, because
Violence.
that's what they were raised in, strength. And if you show weakness, they'll cut you in half. But when you show strength, they'll respect that. And it's one of those things, you don't have to like me, but you will respect me. And so I think that was probably, I was listening to Bill Maher talk about it. He said, man, he said, I don't care had they choreographed that scene right there. It could have never been perfect. I mean, he is there, his fist raised in the air, blood running down his face, the American flag behind him.
Right.
I mean,
Right. Right.
this was something that looked like Hollywood had done, but it was courage. It was courage in the face of fire.
Mm. Mm.
Powerful. Strength, just strength. That, I feel, did something in the American psyche. It awakened something in manhood, um, to be strong
Mhm.
and to lead,
Mm.
to not back down because the pressure was on. Which we need that. We need that when our bills need to be paid. We need that when uh, things go wrong at the house. We need that when, and the attitude needs to be, I think, from a man's standpoint, is we fix stuff. Is something broken, we'll fix it. Is something out of order, we fix it. We don't hide from it. We don't run from it, but we fix it. We fix stuff. And that's, again, that's kind of that picture I was just telling you about,
Mm.
that just is a courage to do that.
Right.
A courage and a boldness. And like I said, a smidge bit of arrogance. We got to have that.
Well, I think, it goes back to the quote earlier, weak men make hard times. We've been in America
Yeah.
in hard times,
Yes, we have been.
very hard times. And I feel like we're at this turning point in our nation where we're seeing manufacturing come back with a vengeance. We're seeing, the government is really refocusing, restructuring. We're seeing our military
Mhm.
just pump out some of the strongest
Yeah.
people that we've seen in a
It's
long
exploding
time.
right now.
Yes, and we are on the verge of this just immersion back to good times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of strong men.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a choice for men to make at this point, right? Am I
Yeah.
going to be one of those strong men?
Yeah.
Am I going to be that mentor, not only because I need to do it because of my need for significance, but because somebody else needs what I have to offer, right?
Yeah.
And that's a choice. And I think that's one of the things that with Unbreakable Men that we're trying to bring to the forefront is now's the time. Step up, get to the battlefield, whatever that looks like. Step up, reclaim that power, that passion, that presence, that purpose that's within you, and do it unapologetically with maybe some guideposts because this may be new for a lot of people, right? To step into that place. But if it's instinctual,
Well, the guidelines I'm talking about has to be because the male is so aggressive instinctively that we can get out of bounds.
sure.
We can do things, break it, in aggression. You know, aggression has been so diminished.
Mm,
It's been so um, uh, uh, softened
mm,
that don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
sure.
Don't want and and part of life is getting your feelings hurt. It
Well, it's certainly
is.
growing part of
Well,
life.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, it reveals things, and we become so soft and so tender that anyone even says anything to us that's off, well, we'll take them to court or we'll just and I'm
Right.
thinking, what? Yeah, it gets to where people are so thin-skinned
Mhm.
that they don't know how to deal with things. And so I just, I've got very strong feelings just concerning the uh, trek of what has brought manhood to where it is, but I sense a pride that's rising. I have a pride that I haven't had in manhood in a while. Now I've never since I was a very young man, I've never struggled with that.
Mhm.
But I sense a pride right now that's rising that is that is beautiful. And that's not to diminish it from a female standpoint. Um, Femininity is something you should take great pride in.
Sure.
I mean, a woman is the absolute most beautiful thing that God ever created. There's an element there that is is breathtaking. It's wonderful, and there should be an element of pride in the sense of expectation. And but on the other hand, with man, is there's a pride in the strength that comes with that.
Mhm.
And I think when you find that balance in a family where you have genuine femininity and genuine masculinity,
Yeah.
because they're designed to flow right together. I am
Absolutely.
I am telling you, they are designed to, if they celebrate one another.
Right.
I have to. I think one of the biggest problems in a marriage between a husband and wife is the fact that they stop seeing what's in each other to celebrate that. I want to
Mm.
celebrate your strengths.
Mhm.
I want to celebrate your capabilities. I don't want to make you less. I want to make you more.
Right.
I want to uncover. I want to be a treasure hunter. I want to literally and to celebrate and to brag on a a good wife. No, that's not. I won't put it that way. A smart wife. She will. She's the one that strokes his ego enough to go out and face the wolf at the door that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't feel like it.
Well,
And
who else is doing that?
well, that's exactly right.
Right.
But how many times have you seen in marriages though where she didn't? She tore him down
Mhm.
rather
Absolutely.
rather than
Yeah.
rather than and it's not even recognizing where he's at right now, but it's knowing the potential is there, and I'm going to create that
Right.
because Teresa, I'm just going to tell you something. A wife, she a wife can dismantle a man quicker than anyone, or a wife can build him up quicker than anything or anyone. She builds his ego. You can do it, and he believes her. And and it's like he puts his chest out, and which he's supposed to.
Yes.
If he was a gorilla, he'd beat on his chest for a couple of times.
That's fun.
But that's the beauty of it, and it's the masculinity that is charged by the wonderful relationship of femininity.
Mm.
And it's a beautiful union. It's a beautiful marriage, if I can say it like that.
Well, that is what it is.
That is what
Hopefully
it is.
it's a beautiful one.
Yes, it is. In too many cases, it's not, because selfishness is at the heart of it.
Right.
Two forces in life: love and selfishness. Period. The root of all failure is selfishness, which is manifest in greed and pride and impurities. But selfishness is at the heart of it. And I will say this one thing. I think a man cannot, he's got to be masculine, he's got to be strong, but he can't be selfish. The strength of a man in its purest form is in his ability to serve and to give. I think that's where you see real masculine strength rise. But much of the insecurity we have is because we don't know who we are. Yeah. And so we try to prove it, and we get a false masculinity. Yeah, I'm taking a bunny trail there, and I don't mean to
No,
do that,
I am glad you talked about that, though, because, when I think about being true to it, that's another reason that you need to have a mentor, right? Because if you're going to operate out of love and not selfishness, somebody's got to peek behind the curtain a little bit and say, hey, that right there, that was a little selfish, with love.
And there's got to be, and isn't it amazing that there's got to be vulnerability with masculinity?
Yes.
Because that seems opposite, but it's really not.
No.
It's a strength, but vulnerability is what yields yourself to show the underbelly of what you don't want everybody to see.
And we've all been conditioned, male, female families, parents, to not be vulnerable. And, I think that is an absolute trap. I think that is something, and I carried it for a long time. I had walls around me deeper than the walls of Jericho. I feel like they were just such big walls to protect my heart, to protect my mind, my body, whatever it was. I don't even know where it stemmed from until I did a lot of self-work to figure that out. I just knew that nobody was going to, enter a space that I wasn't comfortable with, which meant I was blocking myself from being able to make an impact in people's lives and for other people to make an impact in mine. And I feel like that is not a unique situation to Teresa Poor. I think that is across the board, that so many people have put up walls around them to preserve, to protect, for whatever reason. And vulnerability is not even on the radar.
I think there can never be true relationships without vulnerability and transparency. I think that's the only real path to relationships. That's the only place you can really have intimacy. And what's the cute little way they put it? Intimacy is intimacy. I think there's got to be that. And Teresa, this may be, and it's kind of like in your journey of the Unbreakable Men, is to show that it is possible, because that feels like oil and water. Right. It feels like strength and vulnerability.
But is vulnerability potentially a strength?
Well, it is. It is. Incredible confidence. And maybe it's the confidence that knowing I can recover. Doesn't matter what it is.
Well, for me, I know, and you can maybe share something for you, but for me, it was, I didn't want to be hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, of course.
I think the truth for so many people is most people don't want to be hurt. They don't want to put themselves out there to be embarrassed, to be mocked. I mean, we do a lot of work with Unbreakable Life around defining moments in trauma. And, one of the most traumatic moments somebody has is when they spoke up in third grade and everybody in the classroom laughed at them. Right. And so now they have this sear in their heart from a very young age that says, I don't want to be vulnerable.
Isn't that amazing how that sticks? Good gracious. It does.
It does. It does. And And so maybe they don't even know why they don't want to be vulnerable. They just know that that's a place they're not willing to go.
Yeah.
And so much is withheld from them.
Yeah. The path to relationship is going to be vulnerability. And relationships are the most important thing that we can possess. That is the path to everything. Every door is open to our lives through relationships. Every opportunity, it doesn't just fall out of the sky. It comes because I use the example that every person's a door. Now, every door may not look attractive.
Sure.
It may be, matter of fact, a lot of doors are just diminished to say, yeah, they're not worth it. But every door takes you someplace.
Right.
And I have found some of the most unattractive and small doors led to a very open and broad place that led me to another door, because every door leads you to another door. And those doors represents opportunity. It represents position. It represents power. And so, and I will tell people, stop being mean to people. I mean, you know, and that's another thing I have seen with the masked fake masculinity is the fact that they abuse people. They're you know, they put the eye on them. It's almost like a it's almost like a I don't want to use the wrong term, but there's a pecking order. They try to establish a pecking order, and I'm going not, and so as a result, they're trying so hard, and that's a false security.
Right.
That's deceptive. That's not masculinity. It's a deception. Well, it is. It becomes manipulation. I'm trying to reach for the right words without saying the wrong things, but it becomes a deception that what they do is they look down their nose at people and qualify them or disqualify them in that moment, which closes doors. Because who was it? Angela Maya. Maya
Angelou.
Yes, I always get that name backwards. I don't know why I do that. She made one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard. It's not in the Bible, but it ought to be in the Bible.
Yeah.
And that is, people may forget what you said. They may not remember what you ever did, but they never forget how you made them feel. They never forget that. And that right there has closed more opportunities than probably anything I have ever seen. Opportunities were there, but they mishandled them. They mistreated them. Their insecurity caused them to look down on, diminish that, disqualify that door when the opportunities were there. And how they handle people it's usually based on insecurity. They're insecure, they're fearful, and they mask it in strength. And they become bullies. They're punks. They're and I don't even like people like that. I don't. And I like everybody, but I don't like people like that.
Well, one of the things that you talked about earlier was identity. And I feel like, you know, just like something that's purely made perfect in its own right, with the wrong tools can be dangerous, right? Or if you're not aware of the strength that you carry, you don't have the right tools, you can be dangerous. So tell me a little bit about your feelings towards somebody with an identity crisis. I feel like in the world we're in today, we have a straight up identity crisis situation. And when that's the case, it doesn't matter whether you have the tool of masculinity, femininity, power, strength, confidence. If you don't know who you are, how can any of those tools be helpful and not destructive?
Right. Well, I think identity is, first of all, we have been created in the likeness and the image of God. That's our first identity. When that's lost, it'll be replaced with some really weird stuff. That's the first thing. That's our first building block.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of building blocks to it. It isn't just that. That's the first building block. And then, of course, we struggle with identity being established by other building blocks that other people try to throw on, people trying to build our identity for us, and we don't discover ourselves. We try to be other people.
Mm-hmm.
We wear hair like they do, or we'll wear a garment that they wear, or just trying to
And it
capture.
never fits.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's like wearing a hat. I always heard that if you're not comfortable with it, you don't look good in it.
Mm.
If it doesn't fit inside, it doesn't fit outside. And as a result, I have never, ever in my lifetime
Worn a cowboy hat? Oh.
Never have. Well, I just haven't.
Yeah.
Because I never felt comfortable with it. And so as a result, I looked awkward in it.
Sure.
So, I think people try to grab other people's identity, and our first one's got to be our identity that we get from God. I think our second identity should be the identity that's established in who we are as a family, because that's generational.
Mm-hmm.
That's legacy. That is the baton that's been passed to me, that I've had parents and grandparents that have laid a foundation that I stand on their shoulders. And then after that, and equally as important as our relationship with God, is we have the discovery of our own uniqueness. So I think the discovery of our identity is it happens over a process.
Right.
King David, he was anointed 3 times to be king. First, he was anointed by Samuel, then he was anointed by the house of Judah, and then the whole house of Israel. So there was a process in his identity before he took the throne. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in our life, the same thing happens. It doesn't just, I'm just going in, I'm taking that chair. It doesn't fit. I can't take that chair yet.
Right.
I've heard statements about people who became president. They were president in title, but they said it took them a little while to take that chair.
Well, when you're president of the United States, you only get 4 years.
Yeah,
but you think about
take it in a hurry.
queens, right?
Yeah.
In other countries where they have monarchies, maybe it's generationally. So you spoke about legacy, and we talked a little bit about families that are divided and not having that father figure in the home. What does that do instinctively, or an awareness around the importance of generational legacy and carrying my name out into the world? Like, have we lost that?
I think in many cases that the model has been broken. It's been shattered. It's almost like a vase that falls to the ground, and it had a form, but now that's lost. And I think what people have to do is not despair, because you lose your family, you lose this, and suddenly you're standing there thinking, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And I think the place you've got to start, you've got to go back to the very first building block. You got to find out what God made you to be, and who you are in that image.
Right.
Once that is done, then that's a healthy place to begin to build on.
Right.
And from there, I begin to build that with my relationships. Well, no, I start internally. What we try to do too often is I think we try to build our life from the outside in,
right,
rather than from the inside out. And so, but even with what's on the inside, like I said, it's a discovery. You don't take that chair. I remember one time I was watching Star Trek, just loved it. And the captain had his captain's chair. And him and the first officer, they had to leave. They were going someplace. They said to the guy up at the channel, handling the other stuff, what he was doing, he said, "You're going to be the captain until I'm gone. You're going to be the acting captain." And he was sitting in that chair kind of like this, and he's kind of looking around, and the guy said, "You all right?" And he said, "Just not used to the chair yet."
Yeah.
I knew what he meant.
Right.
I knew what he meant. That's a position. That's a place. And I think when their life's been shattered, one of the most important things is to sit down and analyze, who am I? I can start with that. Okay, I'm a good person. I believe this. when you once it's established with God, the next thing is to establish your core values.
Right.
What are my values? What do I value? Not what somebody else. And that's a journey even in itself. What is if I have the Bible said wisdom has built her house on 7 pillars. I think that the pillars are the values because it's through our values that wisdom is expressed. I know you have wisdom because of the way it's expressed through your values. And so I think once it's established, when somebody faces a shattered life, they find who they are in God, and then they search their heart to say, what are my 2 or 3 or 5, 7 values? What is it that means something to me? I'm building my life on that. That anchors me.
Right.
And then that becomes my identity. And then from there, then I can begin to build it on the relationships that drawn in.
Right.
But if I have it backwards, then my values are compromised based on what other people do.
Yes, and or situational.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm talking in a whole bunch of circles.
Well, but it's all so good. And I think, right in line with the unbreakable life journey anyway, because we always start with self-discovery.
Yeah.
Who are we? Because without
Yes.
a strong understanding and that foundation of who we are, everything else is just noise.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what? It's okay to not know yet.
Well, I think it's fun and we live in this time also that it's like immediate gratification, right?
Mhm.
Like I need to know now.
Yeah.
And but there is a discovery process, and I think that is so important. But there's times where I have seen myself in a situation, and so I've immediately acted on what I saw, and I wasn't ready for it yet.
Yeah. I did something, Teresa, that helped me discover who I was. Of course, I started a bucket list. My bucket list, a lot of people think it's just 5 or 6 things. My bucket list,
500.
Well, it's like 20 pages because
Yeah.
I discovered a lot of things. One of the things, of course, I wrote down my core values. I wrote down my name, who it was, what it meant, because I believe names are actually prophecies. I believe it's assignments. Uh, but I wrote down what I liked and didn't like. What was my favorite? I did my favorites list. And that started by somebody saying, "What's your favorite color?" And I said, "I don't have a favorite color," which wasn't true. And I thought, okay. My favorite color is blue. And then they threw another hand grenade in my camp. They said, "What color blue?" I
Yeah.
thought, I don't know. And I realized I didn't have a clue.
Right.
There's so many things. And so I sit down and I started writing my favorite music, my favorite song, my favorite author, my favorite food, my favorite time of day, my favorite city, my favorite everything. And I had a list of probably 50 or 60 of my favorites. And it really gave me, which is important to me,
Mhm.
of knowing my values, because what was it? It was Aristotle that said, "Know thyself."
Right.
That's huge. If
Right.
you don't know yourself, then you're going to be sabotaged. You're going to be hijacked
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And far from purpose, far from
Yeah,
design.
yeah. It's true. It's hard to. It's almost like you can't get your footing when you don't know who you are.
Yeah. And one of the buzzwords that we've used a lot lately, that I've seen in the coaching world anyway, and it's a true, really good explanation of how you feel, but it's imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
I used to think imposter syndrome, I don't know what I don't actually know what I thought it was, but I thought it was like literally I'm wearing, somebody else, my mom's clothes or something like that,
Right.
right? But when I really started doing self-reflection work and discovering, peeling back the layers of who I am, I realized that the reason nothing ever felt right, the reason it always felt a little bit off in the different roles that I carried or the different ways I showed up in relationships was because I was living in imposter syndrome. I was
Yeah.
living a life that was made up probably of circumstances and situations that weren't true to the core of who I was. And so nothing felt right. But now I'm like, I know who I am.
Yeah. And there's a real rest in that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's just yeah, a peace, a tranquility that's found in knowing who you are,
Yeah,
which is what people are looking for. That's
it
why they
is.
drink. That's why they skydive. That's why they're looking for something.
Yeah.
They're looking for that rest.
Yeah. Well, today's talk was incredibly eye-opening. Thank you. Thank
It
you for
is.
sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Oh, you're welcome. You know, I do want to go on one more trail,
Okay.
and that is a couple of years ago, you launched a program called Insignis,
Hmm.
Living a Life of Significance. And currently it's been a program that's an extension of the church Family Worship Center. But what was your heart around the formation of that program, specifically on what you wanted it to become for people?
I think a lot of what we're talked about today really amplifies that as far as my motivation. I really, Insignis is not really designed to teach them biblical principles, which biblical principles or spiritual principles really they are integrated into everything that we do.
Right.
Obviously, we that's ingrained in us. But there are things that success leaves a trail, and so does failure. And people's lives, I think, as needs a sense of significance by realizing what we've talked about today is who we are and how does that create a path here or how does it create a path there.
Mhm.
My goal was to help them realize that they had a dream and then to discover what that dream was and then to help them launch that dream.
Yeah.
And it is I want my whole goal was basically in its simplest form was is to make them understand that who they are and what they are is significant and it's not accident. It's not something that's an extra piece. You know, we bought this thing and it's got 42 pieces and 3 or 4 extra that we don't know where it goes and people think that's their life. Well, I'm
Right.
just that extra piece. I don't really fit anywhere. And that's just not true. Everyone. And so that was my goal in doing that. And so every year we set this up to where we can I say mentor
Mhm.
and disciple and train. I don't push it. I give them principles, I give them ideas, I give them hope.
Yeah.
I give them hope. I encourage them to believe in themselves and to actually believe that what they contribute has value and has purpose and with some it's taken hold and it's launched them because you can't discover that part of you and remain the same.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't accomplish all the dreams that you have in life without doing some of that
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. Everything that we have operates, I think, on levels. And the way I function now, my habits, my behaviors brought me to the place where I tell everybody, I say, look at your life. I say, congratulations.
Yeah.
You've worked hard to get that. I mean,
And some of us are like, yes. And some of us are like, oh man.
dang. Yeah, I've worked hard to have this piece of junk. But it's a mindset though. But when you change that, when you give them wisdom, when you give them hope and insight, it changes how they see it.
Mhm.
And the way you see something changes the elevation of where you are. Everything in life operates off of what you see. When I see it, it's like a gateway to a higher elevation.
Yeah.
And I can never be the same. I see that I'll never be the same anymore. I can't conduct myself the same.
Right.
I'm different now.
Right.
And so
There was a story, and I don't remember if it was you or somebody else that I've been talking to over the last couple of days. But anyway, of somebody that was struggling with trying to go back. Oh no, it was somebody I'm mentoring. She was thinking about, she had reached this new level in life and it had caused a little bit of friction in some relationships that she has. And immediately, if there's friction, one of the immediate thoughts we have is retreat, retreat, like go
right,
back, go back. But the truth is, you can't go back to that person because that person has evolved.
And sometimes the friction is a sign that something is going against the grain. Their behavior, their lifestyle, their DNA, something is different, and you can't. The friction means that there's something that needs to be changed.
Right.
And you're right, though. We retreat. Well, it was easier because I didn't feel friction.
Right.
But you can't move. You can't do anything without feeling friction if you grow.
Right. And I think the key in that place
is hard.
Yeah. is to bring your relationships with you.
Yeah.
Help them get elevated with you.
I heard, and again, I hesitate to say anything, but he said it online or said it on television. David Letterman, he got divorced years and years ago. This didn't happen recently. This was many years ago. And he made a statement. He said, they asked him why he got divorced. And he said, I outgrew my wife, which his life certainly changed. He was not just one of the guys. He was a big deal. David Letterman was king.
Right.
And but you just said it. He should have taken her with him.
Right.
I think that's so sad when we grow independent of each other.
Yeah.
Because
and it's deception usually.
It is, and selfishness, and I think also lazy. I think it's lazy because it's easier for me just to do it myself.
Yeah.
And I don't need anybody else. And then suddenly I realized I don't have anything in common with them anymore. And we've got to work and do a better job at integrating our vision, our hopes, our dreams into those that are around us, because all the boats should rise with the tide. Yeah. It should not just be one. It should be everybody. Everybody that's in relationship with us should be affected on some level by our success.
Absolutely.
So that's
a gift.
Yeah.
Right. Our development. This is one of the things that we talk about a lot of times, is that when I pour into self-discovery and do the work, that means that I'm better for everyone around me.
Yeah.
A lot of people struggle with, well, is it selfishness to do work on self? No, it's actually probably more so selfish to not do it and remain the same and not become who you were intended to be. Right. Yeah.
And you're lazy. Did I say lazy? I said that twice, didn't I?
I'll forgive you. Still my favorite
pastor. No, I wasn't talking about you. I was speaking metaphorically.
Okay.
Well, that did not sound right. You are not lazy. Of all the people that I know, Teresa Poor is not lazy.
Well, it wasn't prophetic either. Wow. Well, what a good talk.
Yeah. I enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this great Unbreakable Men's. I think I'm going to get to be a part. I'm in it, aren't I?
You're in it.
Yeah, we've got the sign up.
You are in it. Well, I do want people to know how they can stay connected to you. I know they can go to jerryedmon.com and see one of your many books that you've written around identity, purpose, women, seeds of life, all of those amazing things. Yeah.
You wouldn't think I would write a book on women. Every time I say something like that, all of the women, they just raise their eyebrows. Yeah, right.
It's a good book.
But 3 daughters, a wife, a dog and cat that are female. I know about women.
You know about women. Well,
no,
it's a good book. They're all good books. Yeah. And from your mentorship, you have a mentorship podcast that goes out every single week. So I want to provide a little bit of a call to arms or a call to action, because this is what we're developing in Unbreakable Men. And that is get connected. Either choose to get into the realm of becoming a mentor yourself, or be mentored so that you can see what that's like. Pastor Jerry said it best when he said everybody should have a person above them that's teaching, coaching, guiding, mentoring, pouring in, and somebody below so they can do that as well. One of the things that I quote you on all the time, sir, you're welcome, and it doesn't always sound super professional, but it's the 3 stages of life. Yeah. First, I need, yes, you say it best.
First stage of life is feed me.
Burp me, feed me.
Burp me, feed me, clothe me, take care of me. Of course, that's okay. They're babies. That baby they're not expected to do anything that you just carry them, you ooh and ah over them. The second stage of growth is now I can feed myself.
Yeah.
Now, it may take me 30 minutes to get my shirt buttoned, but I'll get it done myself. That's an adolescent stage. That's where people even are believing for things. I'm gonna believe for me a car. I'm gonna believe for me a house. I'm gonna believe for me. It's an adolescent stage. They're kids. It's
Mm.
all right.
Mhm.
You know, we get so frustrated at them because, but that's where they are. But the third and the final stage of growth is now I can feed you.
Yeah.
That's where we're to come.
Yeah.
And that's the place where God has for us. So I do feel that there's three stages of growth, and I think that goes spiritually, that goes all through life. Everybody that we know, that they're in one of those stages.
Yeah.
And so our ultimate goal is to, and of course, what you're doing is to help bring people up to a level to where they're not just serving themselves and taking care of themselves, but they actually come up to that level that they're now ministering to, caring for, embracing, covering, hiding, providing. That's where God wants us to be.
Mm. So good. So good. Well, what a great ending note.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for joining
thank
me
you.
today. Yeah. Friends, thank you for being part of our journey to Unbreakable and to really supporting this launch of Unbreakable Men. I will tell you that this is probably one of the most important pieces. And as we step into the month of June, which is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, I think this is the perfect time for us to share these messages and really unite and bring that call to action together for men to step up for the sake of themselves and for their families and their future generations. So thank you for joining us today. God bless you all. Until we see you next time.